Did it play? Because I'm seeing
nope.
no go on movement.
There we go.
There you go. We're professionals.
We went to Afghanistan almost 20 years ago with clear goals. Get those who attacked us on September 11th, 2001, and make sure al-Qaeda could not use Afghanistan as a base from which to attack us again. We did that. Our mission in Afghanistan was never supposed to have been nation building. I always promised the American people that I would be straight with you. The truth is, this did unfold more quickly than we had anticipated. So what's happened? Afghanistan political leaders gave up and fled the country. American troops cannot and should not be fighting in a war and dying in a war that Afghan forces are not willing to fight for themselves. As we carry out this departure, we have made it clear to the Taliban, if they attack our personnel or disrupt our operation, the U.S. presence will be swift and the response will be swift and forceful.
Okay. So that little production by the Black Rifle Coffee guys, their Coffee or Die magazine, that was pretty active towards the late stages of the war. They'd actually go out and in bed with the guys out there. And I think it's interesting how they ended with that statement from the president, because of what we're about to talk about tonight. But first, let's do some introductions. There's a new face at the table. Tell us what you can about yourself, Mr. Zed.
Well, can you guys hear me okay, first off? All right. So 20 plus years ago, went in the Marine Corps, did some time over that way, over in East Timor, Yemen, USS Cole, stuff like that.
Cole. Okay, we're going back.
Yep. And then after I got out, I spent a year in Iraq as a contractor. Several years later, spent another year in Afghanistan as a contractor. And for the last couple of years, just been hanging out at stateside and trying to not get shot at.
Yeah, you're following rule number 1 of life. Don't get dead.
Exactly. Outside of that, just trying to, keep positive about what I'm seeing in the news, trying to,
Hard thing to do these days.
oh, exactly.
So, what would be your range of expertise regarding the subject matter of site security, air-based defense, and or like sensitive sites defense in this realm that we're going to be talking about tonight?
Okay. So my first 2 years in the Corps, I was doing security forces in mainland Japan, guarding weapons, munitions, and whatnot down in Sasebo. Then after that, shipboard engagement tactics, which is what we were taught. So that's why USS Cole, when that happened, we were the first group on site to help out with the security for all of that, helping
Okay.
people get from ship to ship, shore to ship, shore to shore, and then at the same time, transporting not only dignitaries but also colonels, generals, FBI, whatnot at the time.
So HVI security type stuff as well.
Correct.
And memory serves, Sabo is large munitions facilities to load and offload munitions onto surface vessels.
Correct. Basically, it was I think back in the day, they said it was close to the first 30 days worth of ammunitions for anything that happened, in the Pacific, and that was it. Yeah, after World War II, that's what they used that for. So I don't know how true it is today, but back in the day, that's what it was used for.
It's a naval weapon station forward deployed kind of situation.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Comes out of Yokosuka as a department
Yep.
of Yokosuka, basically.
So that established, now we can get on to the subject matter of today. So withdrawal from Afghanistan 2021, we've already built up in a previous stream, we already built up to the point where we're already into the middle of August. We covered a little bit about Reach 885, which was the C-17 that took off with all the people falling off of it. I don't think we need to relive the imagery of that again. And I'm sure there are still a bunch of airmen and NCOs from the Al-Udeid flight line, because the next place that plane landed was Al-Udeid. I'm sure there's a bunch of crew chiefs and people who are still haunted by what came out of that plane, literally came out of that airplane. Not only that, the inside of it had like 600 some civilians in it. But we'll get to the president's final statements there towards the end, because there is a what do you call it, postscript or a prologue to this whole situation just after, like a week or so after the events of August 26th that we'll talk about maybe if we get there. If you do me a favor, bring up the slideshow, KFARR. Yeah, I went all PowerPoint Ranger again. Guilty as charged. Okay. All right.
Me pretend I know how to do this. There we go.
She likes our flags. Mine's wood. I think his looks like it's wood, and then KFARR's is a big one. All right, so go ahead and make it slideshow sized.
Bang. I haven't done this in a long time. Let's put us back over here.
So here we've got they do this a lot. These are photos. They don't actually fly like that because obviously they're not locked in with anything. They're just kind of sitting there. But those are the 13 caskets coming back that would eventually land at Dover. And then there was that famous scene where they're being taken across the flight line. So Dover is the mortuary affairs unit and the casualty reception unit for all of the United States military. I don't know if it's called, I forget what it's actually called. There's a special U.S. Air Force unit that does, that handles remains of all fallen soldiers, airmen, Marines, everybody who goes overseas and they die. And even if they don't die in combat, they still get processed back through the mortuary affairs unit at Dover. And they also they'll bring in color guards from whatever service that they need to for the individual caskets. Because one of those individuals was Navy, one or two were Navy corpsmen, and one was an Army soldier from the airport. So you have to keep that in mind later, because we're going to hear some rather spicy testimony. I don't know if I put it in the slideshow. I can. Rather spicy. No, it's in there. Rather spicy testimony from a Gold Star father. So if you don't know, when you fall in the line of duty, your parents become Gold Star parents. if anybody remembers the movie Saving Private Ryan, when they're driving up to the house of the last of the Ryan brothers, there was 3 stars or 2 stars hanging on the wall. It goes along with that. So this Gold Star Father will mention something about the ramp ceremony. It's called a ramp ceremony when the caskets are taken from the aircraft, when they're loaded and when they're unloaded from the aircraft. They do a full base stop. The whole base stops what they're doing. Moment of silence. Nobody does anything, and they do they move the casket. So that'll come in key later. So you can go ahead next, down one. And so you can see here, it's not very big, but the picture on the right represents how fast the country fell apart. And a lot of the failure that happened in Afghanistan was based upon this concept that the country would hold up. Now, it's interesting. The president said that there were people, that Americans were dying with Afghanistan. But if I'm correct, there was 0 or 2 casualties in the last 2 years prior to 2021. Nobody was dying. It was 0. It was because the Afghan forces were good enough and would hold their ground enough as long as American advisors were there and American air power was there. And most of that air power wasn't even being flown by Americans. It was just being maintained by American contractors. And we had given them a bunch of stuff. We had trained them up. They were halfway decent at using it, as long as they had the maintainers, the American contractors that were there maintaining all their junk. Well, it wasn't all junk. They had some Blackhawks and stuff, which there are funny videos of the Taliban trying to fly them and crashing them because they're like, oh, it's a helicopter. Anybody can fly. No, it's a freaking Black Hawk. Americans who try to fly Black Hawks who have civilian helicopter license still have trouble with it. But once we without telling the Afghans, we just pulled those contractors off the bases. The commander of the base at Bagram, the Afghan commander, one day came to work and there were no Americans there. And no one told him that that was going to happen. So the Afghan National Army and the Afghan security forces, they're all local to their hometowns. They're not local. They're all loyal to their hometowns. They're not loyal to the national flag in any way. So they knew what was going to happen next. So they just bounced. They just dematerialized. Aside from like the commando units and the more professional soldiers. My boss, I'll get him his numbers. But while I'm doing this. But one of the interesting things that they were thinking was, hey, we're going to get away with having like only a couple hundred troops in there. They wanted to have 650 guys in country to pull everybody out. But because of that, you can go to the next one.
There we go.
Right. We get to the question of why Bagram. So there's a whole bunch of things. It's about 60 miles away from Kabul, where the capital was, where we had basically consolidated most of our people to. So although Bagram was a fortress, I've been there many times. It had huge concrete walls all the way around it. I mean, you can tell, Mr. Zed, you've been there? Have you been to Bagram?
Yeah, I was in and out of Bagram quite a bit. 2011, 2012, when I was over that way. You're right. It was a fortress. It was a city amongst on its own.
Yeah, we did a little. Yeah. Do you remember? Did you go in and out of the gates there? Did you actually like go out and in through the gates? Because I never got a chance to do that.
I've only done that once, in and out. I also got to fly into Kabul only once. Never flew out of Kabul, but with Bagram only got to go in once and never actually went out the gate.
Probably through that main ECP that was down to the southwest side. If you look at the map, you can see the.
Yeah, I believe that is it, actually.
Yeah, and it was freaking huge. Like one day they said, "Hey, there was an IED blast at the gate," and I'm like, "I didn't hear nothing." I was way on the other side, and I didn't hear anything like that. So why not Bagram? Go ahead. If you click that KFARR, you click that General's explanation link. We can have them tell us why they decided not to do Bagram in their own stupid words.
share this tab instead. Here we go.
General Milley.
And this is the House Foreign Affairs Committee's investigation
Making
last
decisions
year.
about troop strength in this withdrawal, or were you in a support role?
Let me put it this way: you talking about the NEO, or what
I'm
part of the
talking
mission
about,
you talking
well, let me just go back even further.
Okay.
In January of this year, were you of the opinion, in your professional military judgment, that we should have maintained 2,500 troops, U.S. troops, in support of coalition effort and contractors in Afghanistan?
Yeah, my assessment that I read in the opening statement remained consistent. And
Did that professional military opinion change over the course of the next few months?
not until a presidential decision, and I rendered my opinions, and it was a fulsome debate on all of that. And once decisions are made, then I'm expected to execute lawful orders.
And you've made that very clear. So my question is, when the troop levels were ordered to be drawn down to 0 and first stopping at 650, as General McKenzie outlined, was that your decision or General McKenzie's decision to draw down to 650?
It was a task and then a troop to task analysis, with the task being to go to 0, but you also have to defend the embassy. So
I'm thinking about the chain of command.
Mhm.
Somebody's making decisions about troop levels. And my understanding is it was not the DOD. It was the State Department or the White House. I want to know who said we're going to go from 2,500 to 650 and just protect Kabul and the State Department.
It was a military analysis that 600 to 700 could adequately defend the embassy until contractors come up, and that was then approved up through the chain and approved at the highest levels.
Who made the decision?
I would say that that decision was made in a national security consultative process by the highest levels of our government.
General McKenzie. Did
Pause for a second.
you receive advice from General Miller in the end of 20?
This is not just some rando general they're grilling here. That's General I'm sorry, I won't defame his character. That's Milley, General Milley, who at this time is answering as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the freaking highest officer in the military. There is literally no one higher. And then he goes on to say that this decision was made as some sort of national, what do you say, collaborative?
Yeah, some joint venture.
He's trying to get around saying the word the NCA, or National Command Authority, because he's part of it. National Command Authority is the president, the vice president, the secretary of state, the national security advisor, and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. So he's trying to get around the fact that the NCA, because the NCA should have been the one to do that. Ultimately, the NCA is the group of people, like if you want to shoot nukes at somebody, the NCA makes that decision. If you want to invade a country, the NCA makes that decision. If you want to uninvade a country, the NCA makes that decision. Not state. Foggy Bottom does not control where troops go. You know, war is diplomacy by other means, not other way around. It's not diplomats get to make war when they screw up. No, that's not how it works. So already he's using the weasel words of Washington. Whenever you hear these weasel words, you automatically know that nothing smells good here. There's something wrong. I don't want to get too political, but if you want to talk about why we got ourselves into a situation where Afghans were raining out of the sky and then being blown into it later, and American soldiers are getting shredded, this is where it starts with Washington weasel word nonsense, when they're just trying to, like, not me, I don't know who look at him. He was like, I don't know. Because nobody will ever hold them accountable. Every single senior officer involved in this entire incident.
No, they're going to walk away scot-free.
They got promoted. Zero consequences for them. None of them pulled that move that what was that Marine Corps major did, where he lost his career. They put charges out on him and stuff like that.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about, but I can't remember the name.
Not Eddie Gallagher.
He's like he's not particularly that old. He was kind of
he was in the
on
height
the
of his
younger
career.
side.
He was on a fast track, and he put his foot down. He made a YouTube video, and then they got pissed. because he was like, it was in the heat of the moment too. It was like 2 days after this happened. So go ahead, let it play. Let's see what more weasel nonsense that General Milley
In
can
early
give us.
21 related to troop levels.
Oh no, he's asking McKenzie now, who was in charge of the
Right, I did.
operation.
What was that advice?
The advice, his view and my view were essentially the same view. And my view was that we needed to maintain about 2,500 and that we also needed to work with our coalition partners who had about 6,000 troops in there, NATO and other core countries that would remain there.
Did your professional military opinion change over the course of the spring?
It did not.
Did you communicate? Well, I know you communicated to the president. You said you did. Were you present in the room when General Miller's recommendations were relayed to the president?
Without going, General Miller was present in executive sessions that involved myself, the secretary here, the chairman, and the president.
And those recommendations of the parties, as Secretary Austin said, were debated fully in that meeting.
They were debated fully. I felt that my opinion was heard with great thoughtfulness by the president.
Well, you know, Secretary Austin just made the point that there was a fulsome debate of the pros and cons and the costs and risks.
Oh yeah, SecDef's on the NCA as well.
In August of this year, President Biden told George Stephanopoulos in an interview, no one said that to me, referring to keeping some 2,500 troops in Afghanistan. Was that an inaccurate statement by the president?
Sir, I am not going to comment on a statement by the president.
Okay. General McKenzie, in mid-June, your commanders on the ground were informing you that things were deteriorating. As you testified a little while ago, at that time, in your judgment, you should stop withdrawal and increase forces and or proceed with the retrograde. What did you decide at that time?
We decided to proceed with the retrograde.
Okay. Was were you ordered to do that by the president?
We followed our original orders. We followed those orders through to completion.
Was it the president's orders?
My orders come from the Secretary of Defense through to the president. So it's a very short chain of command for me.
Okay. Secretary Austin, on the 23rd, you told this committee that you had developed a very detailed plan to conduct safe, orderly, and responsible withdrawal, and were executing that plan. On August 18th, the president said, quote, the idea that somehow there was going to be a way that we could have gotten out with chaos ensuing, I don't know how that happens, close quote. How do you reconcile those discrepancies between what you assured the Congress and what the president's telling us?
Thank you, sir. First of all,
so what he's just asked Secretary Austin, who's, by the way, he's your Secretary of Defense, and he's the one who, in my humble personal opinion, has been creating some rather unique and very damaging to combat effectiveness policies. But what you have here is you saw the chairman ask a very simple question of General McKenzie: who gave you the order? He weaseled his way around it. It comes from other. I don't know. General McKenzie was the 4-star in charge of that entire theater of operations at the time. He was in charge of that Afghan pullout situation. So he's the next one down from. So the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff technically doesn't have a direct responsibility to Afghan because his job is a little more overarching than it is operations. So if you really wanted to look at this from where does the buck really stop operationally? It stops at McKenzie, the 4-star in charge of that. He's that area of operations or the battle space commander. I forget what it's called. Somebody help me out. Mr. Zed, you got anything for me?
No, I'm drawing a blank on that one.
It's not a MageCom. It's something else. It's the equivalency of Schwarzkopf. It's like, hey, you've got this big thing. You're in charge. Anyway, McKenzie to go, I don't know where that order came from. BS. Because there is definitely you had a meeting with the guy. It's not like you got an email one day. It's like, oh, hey, pull out of Afghanistan and sign everyone.
Well, he even said, oh, I have a very short chain of command. And it's like, well,
yeah,
there's two people. Which one is it? Just like,
take a wild guess, 50-50, flip a coin. He can't even do that, and he won't do that. So then the chairman goes and asks the same question to Secretary Austin. What he's asking, though, is also a two-part question. He also asked McKenzie, did you feel it was a good idea to continue with the drawdown, even though you recommended 2,500 troops, but yet willingly went through with the order of 650 troops to 0?
Yeah.
He's asking a pointed question, but you can see how these guys, When you get to that level of generalship, you are not a general. You are a politician.
I was just about to say, in 5 minutes of this video, we haven't actually heard a asked question be answered.
Correct, and that's congressional testimony for you. Whenever I hear the terms congressional testimony, I get pissed.
That's why I can't watch them anymore because of that. Because it's like, hey, on this day, did you do this? And they're like, well, I was sleeping for part of the day. I woke up in my dreams. I might have. I don't know.
But they caused a catastrophe.
Yeah.
A freaking catastrophe. 13 Americans are dead. 70 were injured. They don't know how many Afghans, but it's well over 100 killed. We'll see pictures that you can see what it looked like before. So we'll see what it looked like before. You can just guesstimate. Andrews probably saved, Sergeant Vargas Andrews, who we're going to get into later, he probably saved a dozen Marines based on how close he was to the blast and how much shrapnel he took. Not an inch of that guy got spared. And he probably saved everybody who was behind him. One of the people back behind him was his team lead who would actually pull him out of the situation. So we'll get there. All right, press on with this nonsense. Let's listen to what this weasel has to say. I can say that I'm not in chain of command anymore.
Withdrawal of our troops and the retrograde of equipment. That plan, as developed by General Miller and General McKenzie, was executed as planned, and all of our equipment was retrograded, and we drew down the force that we wanted to draw down to that very small force that you saw at the embassy at the very end there.
Okay, so I don't know who I know who this is, but I don't know like his qualifications of being there.
He used to be a general. He was a 4-star general. He was Secretary of the Army for a while. He came up through the ranks in one of the combat branches. I don't remember which one. He kind of snuck in the Obama administration, got popular, and then was appointed to the Secretary of Defense under right after Mattis. He became the Secretary of Defense.
Okay.
So that is Austin, right? That's him, and he's the one who's been doing all the weirdness with the policies in the Army that we're not in the military that we're not going to get into, but that everybody hates. But let's press on, see how he weasels his way out of this.
The chaos that ensued followed the collapse of the military and the collapse of the government. And when those two things happened, then it was going to be a chaotic situation.
And the collapse of the government and the collapse of the military was solely the responsibility of this administration. I know y'all are trying to be careful politically, but it was the State Department and the White House that told you how to make those drawdown of troops from 2,500 to 650 to 0. It was the speed with which they done it, that they carried out that order. That's what caused the chaos that we have. If they'd allowed the DOD to be in a command situation, we wouldn't have had this problem. General McKenzie's testified that the only reason he couldn't keep Bagram was because he had to draw down to 650 troops, and his primary orders were to keep Hamid Karzai and the State Department safe. We just have to admit this was the State Department and the White House that caused this catastrophe, not the Defense Department. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
You go back to the slideshow. So I'm not sure how many of you guys ever were history teachers or history nerds like I was, but that right there is what you call primary source material. That's what you call a primary source. We're getting it from the horse's mouth, exactly why everything happened. And the thesis that the chairman's putting on there, that the drawdown, the rapid drawdown, caused this chaos, is proven by the fact that John McKenzie himself said that they didn't want to do it, but they did it anyway. Their studies, they have a studies and analysis team that's going to look at everything and be like, yeah, if we do it over X amount of time with this number of guys, we could probably hold the fort. But they're like, nah, the president in April, because way back in April, he's like, no, it's going to be September 30th. That's the day. Hey, Taliban, we're leaving on September 30th, just so you know. Like, that's what he did. All right, sorry, Ed 209. All right, so that's the end of Bagram. Go to the next one. So now we're down we're stuck at Hamid Karzai Airport, which is on the northern edge of Kabul, the city of Afghanistan. What you're seeing here is a little piece together of the date. I believe it's August 18th. The satellite photos taken at the moments of prior to or right around the same time. No, Katie said no security. They were getting Americans out. There was no more Americans going in, aside from rapid reaction forces coming out of Kuwait that only had like a 5 to 10 day notice that they were going in. In the lengthy SRS interview, Sean Ryan's interview with Vargas Andrews, they were just watching satellite feeds from, or not satellite feeds, but drone feeds coming out of Afghanistan, all the Predator and Reaper and Global Hawk feeds. And one day their team medic comes in and he's got all of his drugs. And he's like, dude, we're going. And his lieutenant comes like, hey, you can't tell anybody, but we're going in the next 24 hours. And he's like, you think I'm not going to tell people? He actually literally told his lieutenant, like, screw you, I'm going to tell everybody. He wants his guys to be ready. So, he spread the word. Originally I wanted to get into that, but it's so freaking long. It's like 5 hours long. You can't just sit there and chop all that up. But here you can see the bottom left-hand corner reach 885 C-17 taking off with people hanging off of it. I mean, people in front of it. It's like bulldozing down the runway. Later, they got a plan where they would take helicopters and run helicopters at such low altitude down the runway that they would hit people and shove them out of the way with their rotor wash to clear the runway, and also of all their debris that they're leaving behind on the runway so airplanes could take off. That's how they were able to get airplanes off the ground. There's a Xena request. I don't know if you can make that happen, but there's a Xena request. All right. So we don't need to see that's just the source for those photos. Go to the next one. So that's 18th when they overran the airfield. So here we have the Abbey Gate situation. This is one shot. I have a few more of what it looked like just outside the gate. This was after they had calmed it down, because when they first got there, the people were right up against the gate. This is a couple meters, probably about a dozen to 20 meters away from the gate. The first task the Marines had to do was they had to basically shove the crowds back slowly away from the base gate, that particular gate, down that road. Where all the people are, what they're sitting in there in that picture, is a sewage ditch. It's a sewage tunnel, or not tunnel, but trench.
And what's crazy to me is that here that doesn't make sense. But like there, that's just what they were doing to try to get out. And like I just noticed this girl over here, everybody's holding up papers. And this woman down here looks like she's got her cell phone out of the ditch trying to show them.
They are all trying to show them papers. Now, the problem was, there you go, Xena request fulfilled. I think treats are required at this point. I know the system. I've seen this happen. So in the bottom left, you see Sergeant Andrews. What the problem was, when the Marines got there, the State Department didn't have a frickin' system in place for clearing these people. They had not passed to the Marines exactly what to look for. And it took a while for them to get trained on exactly what was a valid entry and what was not. And then they kept getting requests from all kinds of different people for specific individuals. In fact, what got him in the situation he was in would be one of those requests. But go to the next slide.
So did they just not expect that many people to show up? Did they just not care?
They knew they were coming. There was nothing they could literally do about it. At that point, where that picture was taken, go back one.
Yep. There we go. I know how to work PowerPoint.
Where that picture was taken, see way back there in the background is the gate.
Yeah.
Or is it's another guard tower. Andrew's guard tower is behind us. That guard tower was 300 meters away from his, or 200 meters away from his guard tower. If you keep going straight down that way, there's an intersection. In the intersection, the Taliban showed up with gun trucks, like technicals. Yeah. Later showed up with MRAPs because they had stolen and gotten their hands on enough MRAPs to come out. And then he even reported seeing the Taliban guys coming down the that little road there, just beating people and just shoving them out of their way and shooting them if they didn't listen, until they got up to the gate, and then the Americans coming out and talking with them, trying to negotiate the passage of certain people and negotiating with the Taliban to set up security for them.
Yeah, it's kind of
such
sad.
like a mind-blowing thing.
So first glance, Mr. Zed, that situation, is it even possible to handle?
No, it's not. They were grossly outnumbered, not only by the civilians, okay, that were trying to, get on the planes, get out of there, get evac, and a good portion of those civilians were, the interpreters' families, people that we had relied on for the past 20 years, you know. But on top of that, you have, a lot of the ANA that were coming in, and they were with the Taliban. They gave up whatever arms they had, and they flipped, sides in an instant. I'm taking this patch off, I'm throwing this one on. Taking this hat off, I'm throwing this one on. And I understand why a good portion of them did it, because like you said before, they were very tribal. Okay. They weren't national. They weren't fighting for the nation of Afghanistan. They were fighting for their towns. They were fighting for their families. And when you had the Taliban coming in going, you're either with us or you're against us. And if you're against us, we all know what happens there. They were flopping and running the other way. So, and when they come up, and we're the ones that actually trained them. We're the ones that actually got in there and, showed them how to do this, that, and the other, how to use our own machinery. And then they're coming in with that machinery, with those weapons, with those, arms. Yeah, we were severely outpaced, outgunned, and it would have been a bloodbath no matter what we did at that point.
Skip 2 slides ahead, please, KFARR. So looking down on there's another look at some of what was the action that was going on in that gate area. And looking at that, in military terms, what do you call that? That's a fatal funnel.
Fatal funnel, you get that choke point right there? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The Marines are defending the gate there. And then just behind the gate is where they're trying to process all of these people. So not only do they have to keep some standoff to keep them away from the gate to protect where they're processing, but they also have to keep security in the processing area so that, somebody who slipped through and hasn't been searched yet doesn't clack off. And what's interesting about this picture is where that little arrow is pointed, where it says Abbey Gate, and there's a little white line. The termination of that little white line is the tower where Vargas Andrews' sniper team had spent their time there on that gate, providing overwatch. So they had a really good vantage point to see all the way down the entire approach to the gate. So they at least had that going for them. So go back up one. So now we're going to get into some videos. These are congressional testimonies, all of it. 2 of them are Vargas Andrews, and 2 of them are from Gold Star families. One of them is extremely spicy. This father is not happy. So go ahead, hit the first Andrews one. In this survival situation, these dudes will not hesitate to me. Probably not. I wouldn't put it past them. So here we have the same committee, the House Foreign Affairs Committee, but this is a year before.
Ranking Member Meeks and members of Congress, thank you for inviting me to speak to you all about my Marine Corps Scout Sniper team's experience during the evacuation.
Actually, no, this is back in March.
This is my perspective. This is my account and not the DOD's.
But
I'm Sergeant Tyler Justin Vargas Andrews. I'm 25 years old.
He had 30 days notice, 3 days
professionally
notice
instructed
this,
gunman and radio operator for my team. My sniper team was Reaper 2, part of Victor 2-1 Weapons Company, attached to Echo Company, 2nd Battalion, 1st Marines from Camp Pendleton, California. In June of 2021, after having just left Kuwait, we were deployed to Saudi Arabia as a show of force. We practiced a few small-scale non-combatant evacuation operations in the event we were needed in Afghanistan. August came, and 2 weeks later, we left for Kabul. Reaper 2 and Echo Company had a close relationship with the colonel of the Special Purpose Marine Air Ground Task Force. He kept us informed of the situation on the ground in Afghanistan, and we were ready to go, so we thought. An infantry platoon of roughly 40 Marines and my assistant team leader left for Kabul on August 15th. They eventually faced the Afghan civilian crowd that overran the Hamid Karzai International Airport. The rest of us arrived on August 16th. All the Marines linked up and staged inside a gym in HKIA, not far from the airfield. We connected with our command and received our first mission later that night. From August 17th to the 18th, we surveilled and reported on Taliban activity from the top platform of satellite tower near the civilian airport terminals in Kaya. We reconnected with another sniper team and moved back towards our staging area that night. Our team traveled to Abbey Gate Forward in the afternoon of the 19th and set up a position in the tower as Marines in riot gear were sent through the crowd to cordon off a couple hundred people as we tried to begin some form of processing. Hundreds of people came in waves surging through the gate multiple times, physically fighting us. Living out of our tower, we conducted 24/7 operations at the gate. The next 7 days were surreal. Nothing prepared us for the ground experience we were about to encounter. It was chaos, but we worked together to figure out the next best steps. Tens of thousands of people descended upon Abbey Gate. We were looking for anyone with a blue passport first and foremost. People were suffering from extreme malnutrition, dehydration, heat casualties, and infants were dying. Afghans were brutalized and tortured by the Taliban, flocked to us pleading for help. Some Afghans turned away from Kaya, tried to kill themselves on the razor wire in front of us that we used as a deterrent. They thought this was merciful compared to the Taliban torture that they faced. With only shipping, they thought countless Afghans were murdered by the Taliban 155 yards in front of our position day and night. With only shipping containers between us, the Taliban would routinely murder people under our
he'll later talk about how they had cameras on their scopes because a Marine Corps scout sniper team is scouts first, snipers second, so they're equipped with a large amount of surveillance equipment. And when he was up on that tower, the Taliban knew that they could see that the Marines could see them. So they had occupied some of the hangars on the civilian side. So the southern side of Kabul was the civilian airport side. They gotten into parts of that area, and they would drag a civilian out and where they knew the Americans could see them and execute them right there, laugh about it, and then go get another one and then come back right in front of the Marines. And then in his more lengthy interviews, he repeatedly said, "What am I supposed to do about this?" And they're like, "Nothing, ignore it." And he said he can't remember how many he saw. He stopped counting after about 50 or so. So it's just this poor guy and what those Marines were pushed into, the situation that was created is just unfathomable. You can let it roll.
Observation at their checkpoint. We communicated the atrocities to our chain of command and intel assets, but nothing came of it. The troops on the ground had to tirelessly work to control the crowds day and night. Department of State staff in Kaya would completely shut down processing Afghans every evening and into the morning, leaving ground forces with a nightmare. They did not work in reasonable rotations and very much presented an unwillingness to work in other situations as well. No matter our health or condition, the Marines stood watch and engaged in disorderly and dangerous crowds. State was not prepared to be in Kaya. In fact, State would not want to deal with the Afghans unable to be processed, weakening the security of the perimeter. State would take us away from our mission to walk Afghans out to meet the fate of the Taliban, condemning them to death. The Taliban grew in numbers and strengthened their position around Kaya with gun trucks while having occasional visits by Taliban leadership. On August 22nd, an improvised explosive device, IED, probe took place down the canal running along the perimeter of Kaya. This was ISIS or the Taliban performing an IED test run. We reported this to our chain of command. Days later, we received word to be on the lookout for two vehicle-borne IEDs, described as a gold or white Corolla and a green Mazda convertible. Around 2 a.m. on August 26th, intel guys confirmed the suicide bomber in the vicinity of and nearing Abbey Gate, described as clean-shaven, brown-dressed, black vest, and traveling with an older companion. I asked the intel guys why he wasn't apprehended sooner since we had a full description. I was told the asset could not be compromised. Throughout the entirety of the day on August 26, 2021, we disseminated the suicide bomber information to ground forces at Abbey Gate. He was spotted somewhere from noon to 1 p.m. by myself, then Sergeant Charles Schilling, and another. The anomaly in the crowd was clean-shaven and fit the description exactly, traveling with an older gentleman. The individual was consistently and nervously looking up at our position through the crowd. The older of the two wore a black silky hijab that was covering his face most of the time. They both had obvious mannerisms that go along with who we believed him to be. They handed out small cards to the crowd periodically, and the older man sat calmly and seemingly coached the bomber. Over the communication network, we passed that there was a potential threat and an IED attack imminent. This was as serious as it could get. I requested engagement authority while my team leader was ready on the M110 semi-automatic sniper system. The response, leadership did not have the engagement authority for us. Do not engage. I requested for the battalion commander, Lieutenant Colonel Brad Whited, to come to the tower to see what we did. While we waited for him, psychological operations individuals came to our tower immediately and confirmed the suspect met the suicide bomber description. He eventually arrived and we showed him our evidence, the photos we had of the two men. We reassured him of the ease of fire on the suicide bomber. Pointedly, we asked him for engagement authority and permission. We asked him if we could shoot. Our battalion commander said, and I quote, "I don't know," end quote. Myself and my team leader asked very harshly, "Well, who does? Because this is your responsibility, sir." He again replied he did not know, but would find out. We received no update and never got our answer.
Wait, another
Eventually, the
officer
individual
that doesn't
disappeared.
know?
To this day, we
Shocker, right?
Now we're down to the battalion commander. So we've gone from the Secretary of Defense, the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the commander of the entire ATO, down to the battalion commander, and they're like, "Oh, I don't know."
They're all trying to cover their ass.
How the? In what freaking world is this good? How did we get to this point? Like if I were to use that excuse when I was downrange, like I'll ask you this, because you were in the security business. I was in the bloating bombs business. I'll give it to you first. You're out on a patrol doing base security. Say it's you're in Kraplakistan and an insurgency is known to be in the area. You see a guy looks he's acting like a duck. He's quacking like a duck. He's putting out all the warning signs. You call for authority and you say, "Hey, request permission to engage." You know who to call. Like someone told you, "Hey," a guy before you went on the patrol is like, "Hey, before your ROE, you'll memorize and you'll be told, hey, you call me."
Correct.
Right?
You give him the information, and it is my job was to give him the information and then turn around and make sure the information I gave him was absolutely 100% correct. After that, I knew what the answer was going to be. We just had to get the confirmation. If you don't get the confirmation that you know that you were supposed to get, everything starts crumbling. And that's what Sergeant here is doing right now. He's explaining how he got the information. He's 100% on it. He's even pulled other people from outside in. They have verified it. And they go to the person that makes that decision. And when he goes, everything starts to crumble. And it crumbles fast at that point.
So it's one of those things where it's like me and KFARR come from I come from the maintenance world. He comes from the aircraft carrier world. If we would just screw something up, the first thing is going to come to, they're going to come to us and be like, "Why did you do that? And who told you?"
So I know it's not nearly as life-changing, but this is like me driving the aircraft carrier, looking at the OOD and be like, "Hey, what do you want me to do?" And him go. And all the other officers on the bridge just go.
And you're like, good, joyride.
It's like, I can't make this decision. That's why you guys are here.
Yeah, this is a $4 billion vessel. It's not my job. And here's the sergeant. He's like, "I'm here. I've done my job. I got the other people. They did their jobs. Now you do your freaking job." Yeah. And he's like, "I don't know. I'll find out. I've done
everything I'm supposed to do. Now I'm waiting on you. And you're telling me, oh, well, we'll figure it out. Hopefully, maybe." It's like,
and it's not a freaking Domino's pizza that he's trying to get. He's trying to get weapons-free authority on a possible hostile target that could kill hundreds of people. Oh, spoiler alert. All right, let's let it roll out.
We believe he was a suicide bomber. We made everyone on the ground aware. Operations had briefly halted, but then started again. Plain and simple, we were ignored. Our expertise was disregarded. No one was held accountable for our safety. About 1730, Staff Sergeant Darren Hoover, friend and mentor, came to get me from the tower to go help find an Afghan interpreter in the crowd.
He had 3 days prep for this, by the way.
We found the interpreter and his brother, born with American passports. They told us of 5 family members still in the canal. I stayed there waiting for the family members standing against a 2-foot canal wall. 10 minutes passed. Then a flash and a massive wave of pressure. I'm thrown 12 feet onto the ground, but instantly knew what had happened. I opened my eyes to Marines dead or unconscious lying around me. A crowd of hundreds immediately vanished in front of me, and my body was catastrophically wounded with 100 to 150 ball bearings now in it. Almost immediately, we started taking fire from the neighborhood, and I saw how injured I was with my right arm, completely shredded and unusable.
Remember that he said they
I
started.
saw my
taking
lower
fire.
abdomen soaked in blood. I crawled backwards roughly 7 feet because I thought I was still in harm's way. My body was overwhelmed from the trauma of the blast. My abdomen had been ripped open. Every inch of my exposed body, except for my face, took ball bearings and shrapnel. I tried to get up, but could not. Laying there for a few minutes, I started to lose consciousness when I heard Chaz, my team leader, screaming my name as he ran to me. His voice calling to me kept me awake. When he got to me, he dragged me to safety and immediately started triaging me, tying tourniquets on my limbs and doing anything he could to stop the bleeding and start plugging wounds with the help of the other Marines. I was awake through most of it, screaming, moaning, and cursing. I ask you to please ask me about getting shot at the tower in Abbey Gate and how no one wanted my report post-blast. Even NCIS and the FBI failed to interview me. Ask me to elaborate on my ordeal post-blast, and ask me about this one little girl and her family that I reunited. Our military members and veterans deserve our best because that is what we give to America. The withdrawal was a catastrophe, in my opinion, and there was an inexcusable lack of accountability and negligence. The 11 Marines, 1 sailor, and 1 soldier that were murdered that day have not been answered for. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak.
He held it together way better than I would have.
One of the
Recognize
that's so,
Lieutenant Colonel Manford's open.
yeah. Hold that. Pause that for a second. So, the soldier that was killed was a PSYOPs guy. I don't know if it was the PSYOPs guy that came up to the tower and was like, "That's your dude." I don't know. But the PSYOPs guys were in and around that area because a lot of them were also doubled as interpreters, and also they were higher up on the intel spectrum, so they could PID people, eyeball people as they were coming through. He tells it like it is. If in any of the videos you ever see him in, he doesn't hold back much. He tries to be polite depending on the environment he's in, but he tells the story. Now, he says they took fire after the blast. We know they took fire before blast. He has a picture of the bullet hole in the window, and you can see it's blackened. That's because it was a fresh shot. It was very likely in a very close range shot, because it didn't have the time for all of the grease to come off the round as it was going down range and all the burnt powder. Well, you're talking about things too icon that we're not talking about. So that's not, it's just, you're timed out for being a goober. It's not a lack of.
And as always, it's my fault.
Yeah. KFARR didn't do it anyway. But the point is like, he had a picture of it. He had a buddy who was behind him, who he looked behind him and he saw him laying on the ground holding his leg after he noticed that the guy who got shot in the leg, the doctors at the Roll 3 clinic that was on the other side of the airfield. Remember, they're on the south side of the airfield. They still have stuff up on the north side, and one of those things is the old Roll 3 trauma center, like hospital. Like a lot of his stuff got patched up there. Same for a lot of the other guys, and the guy had the bullet removed there. And the original reports that went out that it was a complex attack with 2 bombs and shooters. There was a second bomb, but it was up near the British. The Brits still were occupying this hotel that was up the way from him. In fact, 3 days before this, he had gone up to that hotel and talked to them and confirmed some of the intel about these suicide bombers and stuff. But that's important to note because later the American government insisted it was just one bomber. And here's the kicker. They say that the bomber wasn't Taliban. The bomber was ISIS-K. Now, that's very possible. ISIS-K would do an attack like that to make it look like the Taliban's fault because ISIS-K and the Taliban hate each other. All right. ISIS-K does hate us, though, just as much. One of the neatest things that happened in my military career was I was in Turkey. Was I in Turkey? No. I don't know where I was. But I saw a news story. No, I was in Iraq? I think I was in Iraq. We dropped a Moab on the ISIS-K guys. They were in caves in southern Afghanistan, up in the mountains, and nobody wanted to go in and get them. So they're like, "Oh, well, I've got something," and we dropped a Moab on them to snuff them out. All right, so the next one is going to be questions about the Nightmare on the Ground. Let's do that one, and then we'll do Spicy Dad.
So it's just crazy to me just to talk for a hot second here. I think this is, that's the one I'm looking for. Share this tab. Hearing the testimony for 9 minutes is like, why don't we have someone's head somewhere, in a city and be like, this is the guy who caused it, his fault. Don't make his mistake.
We'll talk about the reprisal strike. There was a reprisal strike. We'll get there. It's not good. It's not good at all. Mr. Zed, you know what I'm talking about? All right, roll the tape.
But I want to turn to you, Mr. Sergeant Vargas Andrews. You described the scene as chaotic, that the State Department was not prepared, that they would completely shut down processing every evening and into the morning, leaving you and your colleagues with a nightmare, you called it. Could you describe that?
Yes, I can, Chairman. So for us, obviously, guys, ground forces at Abbey Gate were routine, and I'm sure it was like this at other gates as well. But at Abbey, helping process between, 7 of us in our sniper team, we would go down, and if we weren't on the gun or we weren't catching a few winks, we would be down processing nationals and civilians, and
behind his right shoulder is his mom.
And from us, we were passed from our chain of command, throughout the evening to halt processing Afghans, to stop searching them. We kind of had to keep control of the crowd that was left over in the evening throughout, I would say, sundown to sun up. There was no plan in place throughout the evening, and the State Department would not take Afghans that we processed or searched. So eventually we just stopped throughout the evening. I'll go back to you.
Yeah. And I think because you're correct, there was no plan. There was no plan. And then the plan was to leave the Taliban in charge of this evacuation, which led to the chaos and the bloodshed that ensued after that. I want to focus specifically on what you saw on August 26th. I know be on the lookout, an intelligence bulletin went out identifying 2 individuals as a potential IED threat.
That is correct.
To the Abbey Gate.
Yes, we routinely would send 2 or 3 guys back to collect intel from our intel assets over in the Joint Operations Command. And that morning around 2 a.m., we were passed that a suicide bomber was in the vicinity and in the surrounding neighborhoods, potentially moving towards the gate. We were told that he was wearing a brown man dress, a black vest. He would look clean shaven and be younger, with an older man traveling as his companion. And we saw just that on the 26th, around 12:30 in the afternoon.
And in fact, you said you passed along the communications network that there was a potential threat, an IED attack imminent. And in your words, this was as serious as it gets.
That is correct. We had eyes on these two individuals that fit the exact description that we were given from our intel assets. And we had pictures. We had them clear as day to be able to see through our scope with ease of fire on both individuals, as well as through our spotting scope. We have high-powered optics with quality lenses on our cameras to take clear-cut pictures of everything that we see. That is an enormous part of our job.
Do you still have those photos?
They were taken on an SD card when we turned them over to intelligence.
Then you said you requested from your commander, Lieutenant Colonel Brad Whitted, to come to the tower to see what you saw. And the psychological operations came to the tower and confirmed that the suspect met the suicide bomber description. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes.
So you had him.
We did.
And then you showed this evidence and you asked your commander if you could shoot.
We did, Chairman. Both myself and my team leader asked for engagement authority, and he responded with he did not have that authority. So we asked who did. He told us he did not know and would go find out. In that time, in the time of talking with him and keeping eyes on this individual over the course of 30 minutes, the two individuals both disappeared into the crowd of thousands, as shown on the slides as I was talking. I mean, I think everyone can understand by looking at some of those pictures that I had up there how enormous the crowd was. I mean, it was unfathomable. Very easy to move through and conceal yourself, and that's what happened.
So you asked for engagement permission, and your commanding officer says, "I don't know."
That is correct.
He doesn't know if you have permission to take out the threat.
Yes.
There are no rules of engagement on the ground.
We were told to pass to our command if we saw any suspicious activity or hostile intent, and that's exactly what we did. We were not returned with an answer.
And then you ask, well, who does
Yes.
know? And he says he doesn't know, but would find out, and he never got an answer to you.
He never did.
And the individual disappeared.
That he did.
And you believe that that was a suicide bomber.
We do.
And then you said, we made everyone on the ground aware. Operations had halted, started again. Plain and simple, we were ignored. Our expertise was disregarded. And then lastly, no one was accountable for our safety that day.
That is correct, Chairman.
No one was no one was held accountable.
No one was, and no one is to this day.
Did your battalion commander run that request up the chain of command?
He should have. That was his responsibility to. I don't know if he did.
Wouldn't
I
that be
can't
the
answer for
normal
that.
protocol?
That would be the normal protocol, Chairman.
But we don't know. And as a result, we have 13 dead servicemen, women. We have 170 Afghans killed and 45, including yourself, sir, injured.
That is correct.
Because that threat could not be taken out because your commanding officer couldn't give you the order.
That is correct.
Amazing.
All right, we'll pause it. All right. Oh, yeah. Okay. Enough of that. All right. So let me ask you, Mr. Zed. You're here for a very really important reason. You've served in those kind of situations, right?
Correct.
All right. I did when I was in KFARR 2010. I thought I was volunteering for something, and I ended up being part of a base-wide security improvised force to guard every ECP we had because of possible suicide bombers. But we were guarding against our own people, and we had some Afghan stuff, people wandering around and stuff like that. So but we could control them. We had single file lines and rules, and standoff and things like that. And even then, it's scary because you eventually they come point to point with you.
Correct.
So if you're Sergeant Vargas or you're in a Sergeant Vargas-like situation, how would you expect your ROE to be? What would you expect to see out of a rules of engagement?
First off, it's a very specific ROE setup. Okay, if you identify, you confirm, there should be an action to go along with it. And like I said before, if you don't have that action to go along with it, that house of cards just starts to fall. Okay. Now, in his situation, he did everything he was supposed to. He did everything above and beyond what he was supposed to, in my opinion. Okay. Not only did he verify who it was with his little team and himself, but then he had someone else come in with expertise come in and say, hey, this is it. There shouldn't have been a, all right, well, who does have the authority? It should have been done right then and there.
He put his team leader on the scope and he put the colonel on the scope.
And that colonel should have said, take him out.
Because if you remember what he said with ease of fire. Meaning now there's not even a collateral damage associated with this, like a background problem. He has an ease of
and if
fire
there is,
on
it's probably minimal.
Right. He can mitigate it.
Yep.
So here we have a situation in which this problem could be solved, but you know where ROE comes from. ROE does not come from the battalion level. Where does ROE come from?
Well, for us, ours came down from division. So I'm guessing that it was above division that gave it to us. So whoever is the generals that's sitting around the table going, okay, these are the parameters and these are going to be the actual rules of engagement at this point. So it's going to be those who set up the playing field. Those are the ones that are going to set up what those rules of engagement are.
And would that not be General McKenzie at this point? He's running that AO. He's running that entire operation.
I would absolutely say he's at that table. Absolutely.
Okay. So we've established that. Sergeant Vargas has told us. He has told us that there's nobody knows what's going on. The guys at the top have told us they don't know what's going on. So we got everywhere in between. We got from the guy on the gun to the guy at the top of the chain of command, and they're all like, I don't know. Vargas knows his commander is the guy who's supposed to tell him to shoot. But that guy's like, I don't know. What the hell kind of military operation is this?
And then he said that old boy disappeared for like 30 minutes and never got back to him.
Correct.
In my head, in that situation, it would be like, hey, who needs to say okay?
Well, the colonel doesn't. The battalion
hey.
commander's not going to run around by himself. He could just climb out of the tower, go to his radio op, and be like, "Get me on the sat, or just give me my sat phone so I can call the KOC or the wherever the operation center is back at the deed and be like, hey, I need weapons free authority on some dude." And it should be that simple if it's that bad. I know that sometimes our A-10s would be on a mission to do something and there would be a questionable situation. So they would call over SATCOM to the what do we call? Oh, the Coalition Air Operations Center, and they'd be like, "Hey guys, go to the targeting cell and be like, hey, can we do this?" The targeting cell is like a bunch of colonels and lawyers, like JAGs and people like that. That can be like they can be like real quick, be like, yeah, that's cool. Go ahead, knock it out.
Yeah, those bean counters is what we refer to them as.
Yeah.
What is the collateral? What is the the fallback on it?
Right.
And they're just counting the beans.
And that there was none of that established, none of that set up. This was all just some sort of cockamamie BS operation that just completely went to crap. Now,
just because, again, 30 minutes seems like a long time. For a situation like that, I know, to break it down to the dummiest of terms, in a police situation, you see a guy, you go, hey, can I arrest this guy? And then 30 minutes later, you're just still sitting there with your dick in your hand, waiting for somebody to say anything. And by that point, old boy's gone 30 minutes away.
Or if you wait 3 seconds in some situations, he's pulled out his gun and shot you.
Yeah.
And this
like I
is
said,
a guy now with a gun. He's got
that's the dummiest of breakdowns. But yeah, like this situation is so much more, hey, this needs to happen now, or
Right.
X, Y, and Z might happen.
I did think that during the testimony, I was like, there's a little bit of a law enforcement feel to this, but on a scale like 8 times, 10 times, 100 times
like,
up, where it's like, it's the same thing. You got to pull the trigger or else.
Yeah.
And they waited past or else.
And they waited a whole TV show.
No, it gets worse. It didn't blow up for several more hours.
And what kills me about the whole situation there is the fact that you have the intelligence that came down said, look for this individual and then look for this individual that's going to be with him. And all of that came to fruition.
Yeah.
So who put that out there, and why is there not something to go along with it? Are we just looking for Waldo, and when we find Waldo, we just wave at him and let him go?
Yeah. So yeah, my question is this: someone said, hey, we need to put this intel out on the net. The next step is, okay, well, what do we do with it? So what would have happened is a matter of what the ripple effects of that was. He drops a guy, there's a stampede, and a bunch of people get killed in the stampede. He'll go down, he would have been in jail. He'd have all his limbs, because now he only has half of them, but he would be in jail. Because the government would look for a fall guy, and it's always the lowest man on the totem pole that's the fall guy. Even if everything transpired up to the point where the colonel said, I don't know. Even if that happened, hey, Kenny, even up until that point, still probably would have went down for it. Anybody who's been enlisted knows if there's even a sliver of a chance that it could be your fault, it's going to be your fault.
Lowest man on the totem pole.
Especially if your commander goes, I don't know, to a request for fires mission. Like there is no. So if I'm an aircraft maintenance officer, I'm the one who greenlights maintenance on airplanes. So I have to be I'm the authority who has to be like, hey, I need to down this jet, or I need to let that discrepancy go and fix it later. If I down the jet and then later someone comes and be like, hey, why did you down this jet? Well, it was this broke. And the guy says, hey, that was a stupid idea. That's my fault. Because I'm a maintenance officer. If you're an infantry officer, you're supposed to tell the infantry who to go unalive. Right? I mean, am I wrong? Am I missing something? Because I'm not infantry.
No, you're right there.
All right,
you're using this thing that has flawed you a lot called common sense.
Not that again.
Lots of people don't operate with that.
Do that again? I'm sorry, guys. I forgot. I'm not supposed to do that. All right, let's. We got a whole bunch of Raiders in here. Let's hit the spicy father. So you think we're pissed? You think we're mad? Wait till you see this guy. And mind you, he is talking to United States House Representatives Foreign Affairs Committee. He's talking to them under sworn testimony.
And held accountable.
Now my crappy laptop is wanting to be difficult. There we go.
Not a single person has been held accountable. Our so-called leader can't seem to even utter their names in public, not even once. Mr. Biden has run his entire political campaign for 50 years as the family man. Well, I've got news for you, sir. The curtain has been lifting, and that campaign slogan will never work again. We have seen what's going on in your family. Even worse, we've seen how you've been treating us as Gold Star families. And there couldn't be anything more disgusting, cowardly than you treated us. You are a disgrace to this nation. You have no business having ultimate command over our military, and I regret not saying that to your face when I had the opportunity in Dover. I felt it more important to bite my tongue, but I also had more important things on my mind at that time, like receiving my son's lifeless body stateside. While I stood there on the tarmac, watching you check your watch over and over again, all I wanted to do was shout out, "It's 2:30, asshole." But out of respect to the other grieving families, I bit my tongue once again. Well, as you could probably tell by now, I'm done biting my tongue. You, sir, stole their lives, their futures, their dreams, and have ripped apart 13 families. You cannot even man up and admit that. You, sir, gave us all the title Gold Star family. You, sir, discredit honor and integrity.
All right. So you can see how he feels.
Little spicy.
It's understatement.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I put that in there. I included that because this is a very emotional thing. And I think that it goes to show that there's a lot of people in this world who probably think that. I don't remember the day.
I don't know how there's people in the world that don't think like that.
You guys remember the day that that news story broke of him sitting there while that ramp? Remember, I told you at the very beginning, I set this all up. There was going to be that ramp. Remember the ramp ceremony? You got color guard, full dress blues, silently marching the caskets away from the aircraft one by one. And this dude's like, I think he was worried he's going to miss his episode of Hazel. Oh, service. Look at that.
Lucky.
Look at that. Mine moved to a different house. His probably would never do that. Mrs. KFARR, would you do that for him?
I don't think Mrs. KFARR's ever been in my office.
Oh, is it like the no-go zone?
No, it's just that far out of the way compared to the rest of the house.
I got you.
This is the furthest point from the front door.
Well,
I'm underground.
yes, I'm not, but and who is it said is he right? So I'm not going to get into on somebody else's stream any kind of like a little real legit political debate. But if you look at the mounting evidence that we have here, I can't blame the dad. We've established that the entire chain of command from battalion commander all the way up to the freaking joint chiefs of staff had no goddamn clue who was in charge. Nope, I wouldn't. I get it. I wouldn't have it. But it's like, okay, so he's pissed, right? The next woman, this one's going to hit you in the feels in a different kind of way. This is a mom of one of those people who we needlessly, senselessly lost. And again, unfortunately, she's talking to the one group of people in the world who have all the power to do something about it, zero of the will, and will never, ever make anything.
Yeah, so obviously nothing's going to bring their family member back.
No.
But I feel like they would probably feel much better if they just had someone to blame.
Some catharsis.
That person failed my family member. The entire world didn't fail them.
And I think it's good that the house. Yeah, I think it's good that the House has done this at least to give them a chance to, because if you juxtapose what we just showed you, the congressional testimony from March, of every single senior leader going, duh, and then the parents getting a chance to be like, this is what your duh did. Not to mention how many countless hundreds of Afghans are walking around right now with only one leg or one arm, or like Andrew's, only one leg and one arm. And before we go any further, I didn't show this. When Vargas got back to the country, I keep calling him Vargas. It's not his first name. He has a hyphenated last name, Vargas Andrews. When he got back to the country, he was taken to Walter Reed after a little stint at in Wiesbaden in Germany at the medical center we have there. He comes to Walter Reed, and he's all laid up in Walter Reed. Now, mind you, he's been through about 14 surgeries at this point. His left hand is completely shredded. It's still there, though. The only thing that you can touch of it is the tips of his fingers. He's got no right arm, no left leg. And our glorious, illustrious president walks up to him with his right hand outstretched to the guy with no right hand to shake his hand. And then when that doesn't work, he looks at him very awkwardly and then just grabs his pinky and shakes it. And then
situational awareness is out the window with this guy.
Leans in really, really close because you know where he's a fan of. I mean, Vargas Andrews doesn't look like a little kid, but maybe with missing some of those limbs and stuff. But he leans in really, really close and is like, "What do you want?" He asked him, "What do you want?" His mom just about became
time machine?
arrested. He said, "I just want to." He looked at him at first like, "What?" His mom jumped out of her chair. She got a little hot, and then basically she yelled at the president for a while and told him, "You're going to give him everything he needs. You're never going to let him want for anything and just shoot him out." And then there's more. If you go to the Sean Ryan podcast, he explains it. It's his words. Can't tell you if it's 100% true or not, just caveats. But his mom was seated behind his right shoulder in that meeting. I have a feeling that if she ever met the president again, she might get arrested. USSS might have to. But go ahead and let this play. Let this mom tell her piece because it's also heart-wrenching. Sorry, I'm going to pull on heartstrings.
Hi, my name is Christy Shamblin, and I'm Sergeant Nicole Leanne G's mom-in-law. Nicole's mom, Becky, is sitting with her in heaven, or she would be here today to tell you about her daughter. Nicole was a proud female Marine. She and countless others like her put on a uniform every day to protect and defend our freedoms. They gave up their own freedoms to ensure a safer, better, more freedom-filled life for the rest of us and our allies. Nicole and the other heroes who evacuated over 120,000 allies did not have any part in starting this war, but they gave their very last breath to see it to the end. Nicole spoke about how very proud she was to be rescuing vulnerable and fearful people. I vividly remember her telling me, "These mothers are throwing their babies over razor wire because they know we will keep them alive."
Oh, yeah, pause it for a second.
Those men and women in uniforms loved their job.
So one of the things that Vargas Andrews talks about doing is women would be holding their babies up to them like by the dozens because their kids were dying of heat stroke. And they would grab the baby, and I had a picture of this in one of my other slideshows. They would pick up the kid and they would push it up to the wall where another Marine would grab the kid, bring it over. The medics would rehydrate the kid, get the kid going, but then they'd have to send it back over the wall. And they did this like all the time, round the clock, just bringing little kids back to life. But then they'd have to send them right back out. That just, like infants. All right, let her play.
Jobs, and they carried out this humanitarian evacuation in the worst of circumstances. Those victories belong to our troops and the people in uniforms. While those victories belong to the troops, there were failures, and I can count over half a dozen opportunities to stop this tragic ending. Systems we have in place were ignored. Descent cables signed by an unprecedented 23 members or people. Our armed services request for air support. Multiple military personnel saying this is not a good idea. Our snipers asking for permission to engage. Every one of them ignored. These are red flags. Why were they ignored? Please help us answer those questions so we can create positive change. The United States of America will again be called on to evacuate and to rescue vulnerable groups of people. Please help us make positive changes so that we don't have to watch another parent walk through the hell that we are walking through. I like to always tell a story about Nicole. It makes me feel better. So I'm going to end with a story about her. She was a powerhouse. She was physically in the best shape I've ever known a female, 5'1" female to be in. We went hiking with her 5 years before her murder, our family, and my youngest son was about 6 years old at the time. And after we hiked in about 2 miles, he was voicing his discomfort in hiking back. And so Nicole cheerfully piggybacked him back 2 miles, leading the group, always encouraging us to keep going and to stay hydrated. She was always encouraging, and I'd like to encourage you guys to help us finish this. Make sure another family doesn't have to join us. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to what we can accomplish together.
Thank you, Chris.
So what's interesting here with this video, you can go back to the slides. Well, you can leave it here for now, but what's interesting with that video, she is a mom. She's just a regular parent out there, mom-in-law, I guess. And here she is. She can see it. She can see, she can list the point of failures. Now, she mentioned something very crucial. The 21 cables, or was it 21 descent cables. The 21 descent cables are from the State Department, CENTCOM, because when the orders go out, you know, the orders came out and the commander's like reading his orders. He's like, what the hell is this? Who? What? Like whoever watches Law Talk with Mike will know that. Sweet Jesus, what is this? Like, that is not like this. No, we cannot do this. So what do? They write back, please help, no. And when they say the term cables, that is a term colloquially used in State Department world. Mr. Zed, you've ever done any, like, as a Marine, you ever worked with the Staties and any kind of their security details or anything like that? Don't worry, KFARR mutes itself all the time. You're still muted, but that's okay. We're used to that here.
I've worked with the State Department on a small level, but yeah, I understand what you're saying with the cables and the communications going back and forth.
And generally, those are a big deal, right? Because they go through their secure diplomatic. They're not just like an email, right? They're going through a secure process.
Correct. It's all encrypted, whether it be phone call, email, or what it is.
They have like their own version of DSN, right?
Correct. We called it, what was it, blue screen or something?
Okay, I didn't know that, but yeah, all right. Yeah, and I knew they had something. I don't know what it was called, but yeah. So these are not something that they're just saying. They're not just writing a strongly worded memo. Like it's going back on a platform that implies pay attention to me.
Absolutely.
In KFARR, this would be like if you got a weather advisory. It'd be the equivalency of Admiral Halsey and Typhoon Cobra. Hey, there's a typhoon. Don't go there. Ship captain's going, hey, we're sailing into a typhoon. Don't go there. And Halsey's like, nah, I'm going there. And then fast forward a couple of days, and he's got less ships. And one aircraft carrier missing part of the bow. So we have all that going on. This mom can see it. And her beautiful daughter-in-law, who was amazing and would have been an excellent Marine, loved being a Marine, is poofed out of existence. And she even can tell you all the things. She has all of the answers. So when you're a history guy, you learned, oh, if you're going to craft a thesis, you better be able to back that stuff up, right? So you can see how I'm backing stuff up here. So this picture was taken August 25th, 2021, day before the bombing. In your professional opinion, is that essentially a zero security situation? Is that loss of control at this point?
Very, very close to it, if not already there. Absolutely.
I don't.
And the reason I say that is because you have very little control on the outsides of those fence. You are pigeonholed right in that valley right there. And that's why I say that if you haven't lost all control, you're very close to it right there.
So we find ourselves at this situation, and Sergeant Vargas Andrews is willingly sit in that. All of these Marines, they're all in there willingly working their hardest and their damnedest, and the State Department guys are taking nights off. Now, we've all been on, KFARR's been on Navy ship. Do you get to take just you only? I mean, you guys work what 4 on, 4 off, or what were your shift rotations like?
For watch, it was For watch, it was just we rotated. It was 4 hours, and it rotated backwards all day. So there was never someone not working.
Right. And when you did it, if you were set up an operation, whether in the civilian world or in the military world, was there ever like, oh, we're off tonight, all of us, we can just all go home?
No. That would be at the police department. They're like, yeah, once the sun goes down, we're just gonna call it quits. See you guys in the morning. Like, that's not.
You call 911, you get an answering machine. Yeah. No, that doesn't happen. When I was
the number you've dialed is unavailable. Like
when I was overseas, and I've been on 5 deployments. I can't remember how many months. Each of them 3 to 4 months. I had exactly, and this was weird, and I'm not sure exactly why. There was something more to it than just our decision. But when we were in Turkey in 2016, we didn't fly for 24 hours. We had 1 day off. And they didn't make us do maintenance because it was the day before Christmas. So like, go have a Christmas party and go have fun, which was extremely weird. And I was concerned almost by how weird it was. The rest of that, 24/7, 24/7 operations for the entire time you're there. There is no, oh, we need CAS support. We need bombs and we need help and blah, blah. Oh, sorry. No, we're all we went home for the evening.
Yeah.
So how do we get to this extent? Where do we, like at this point, you can just go to the last slide.
Yep. Help if I was over there.
These are the Abbey 13. You have a Navy corpsman, and the rest were Marines. Well, 2 Navy corpsmen. It looks like, anyways. That doesn't look like Marine uniform to me, but maybe I'm wrong.
That top right is Army, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the PSYOP guy.
Right.
Bottom second in from the right looks like a Marine NCO. Marine E7, a chief. But I don't see any insignia, so I can't tell. It's not an officer. But hundreds of Afghans were wounded or killed. And the thesis here is all but proven out. It was a massive failure in the chain of command. We saw a failure at the very top of the echelons. We saw our commander, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the Secretary of Defense play well, it wasn't me. I don't know. We just followed our orders. From who? Oh, well, it's not a long list.
Oh, but, from my chain of command, it was somebody up there, but I'm not going to say who it was.
2 people.
Exactly.
General McKenzie, do you think we should have done this? Well, we followed out our orders. Yeah. You recommended.
I gave him my opinion, and we debated it thoroughly, and
came from some sort of national joint, command communicate, blah 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 blah, weasel words.
Yeah, the list above me is short though.
Yes, it's only 2 people. And there's one of the people on that list that has not spoken a word. And in fact, to what the parents were saying, has yet to utter a name. Has not uttered a single name of these 13 individuals. Which I have I can add their list, their names to this. I'm going to add something to that slideshow, so you're going to have to refresh it, okay? The beauty of Google Docs, I can just do this, delete. I said delete.
Is this the first time military command has ever failed? Absolutely not.
Heck no. We have entire wars where they screwed the pooch. I have to resize it. Give me a second. I mean, have military commanders in terms of like setting up ROEs and committing these strategic violations like this? No, this has happened before. It's never going to stop. It'll happen every once in a while. Has it happened on a scale like this where it extends that far through the chain of command? Because you're talking, if you look at the chain of command as a spectrum, like this is the private and this is the Joint Chiefs of Staff. We're talking like this much of it is affected. Okay, we're not even like more like we've only isolated out like the bottom 10% of the chain of command, maybe less. That is some crazy how the only one's going, hey, I did my job. And everybody else is just like, I don't know, or it's him, or it's that guy. He told me. I don't know who told me. Somebody told me. Well, those guys told me. Nobody. So go ahead, refresh.
Well, so because this is, not at all Ukraine-Russia related, but this is one of the times where it's happened. And because there's pictures, video, YouTube's now just holding all this information where they're in front of major people saying this stuff, and everyone in the country can be like, oh, yeah, I don't know anything about the military, but it seems like they fucked up. Where maybe back in the day, there wasn't that technology.
Not to get petty, but hey, 1A auditors, you might want to look at what's happening here, because this is what the First Amendment was meant for.
Do you mean covering something actually worthwhile?
Not just worthwhile.
I want to buy a stamp.
This is a peaceful redress of grievance. This is what that looks like.
Something real to actually redress the government about, instead of they were mean to me when I was there for an hour to buy a stamp and harassed everyone.
So those parents that went in there and addressed Congress, that was their First Amendment right. That was their right to redress their government peacefully. That was the redress of government part. The press part is not necessarily part of that redress part. Okay? The press cameras in the room were there objectively to report the redressing. They didn't go in there and yell at people. They weren't in there getting themselves into the story. They were reporting what those parents were doing and their redress of their government. A perfectly lawful and constitutionally protected activity, hopefully for now. And think about it. When you juxtapose that versus what they're doing, what they think they're doing, what those parents were doing. They think they're doing what Sergeant Vargas Andrews is doing. Now, Sergeant Vargas Andrews didn't actually want to do that. He didn't say, hey, can I do that? A senator or a congressman, a really good, really nice congressman, I forget who he was, came to him and was like, hey, because he was at Walter Reed, he was still in rehab at Walter Reed. He's like, hey, would you mind, we're having this thing, would you mind coming? Because he wasn't originally supposed to be there, but he was like, I guess, because he was on his way out. He was basically on his discharge from the Army or the Marine Corps. He was just at Walter Reed receiving his recovery, so he could go in there and say what he wanted to say. And he talks about it again in his other interviews about what he wanted to do and how he wanted to do it. And he doesn't really have a political leg. To stand on. Don't worry, he's if you watch enough of him, you'll know that it doesn't really bother him.
Oh no.
But he doesn't really care about the politics of it all. He's there because of his brothers and sisters that died there. And that's really what this is all about. Those names right there. And that's why I thought it was very important to bring a Marine on to help, and to be part of something involving these Marine Corps veterans who were sacrificed, I call it. I mean, what's your take on it, Mr. Zed? How do you feel?
I'm looking at the ages of each and every one of these here. And I got out after 8 years, and I was older than all but one of them when I got out. And that tells me that none of them were even close, besides one or two, to even having 2 full terms in. And that's heartbreaking. And I'm looking at a couple of them here, and they're younger than, my kids, at 24 and 22. And I'm looking at 4 in a row, 20-year-olds, 5 in a row that are just 20.
So they're a year into the service, 2 years into the service.
Yeah. And I know what it's like to be asked to do something that you may not agree with. Be told, hey, look, this is what your job is. Now go do it. And put your pack on and off you go. And to watch, the names that you got right here in front of you, it's a whole different level of heartbreak. Listening to that mom, listening to that dad, a whole different level of heartbreak that a lot of people aren't going to know and realize. I've had plenty of my brothers and sisters that just, didn't make it for one reason or another. Some in combat, some, decided that the world was just too cruel for them and, took matters in their own hands. This situation here just puts all of that to shame. And it's hard to put into words how distressing this is at times to see this.
Right. Because these are 13 people who lost their lives.
Yeah.
Of these 13 people, each one of them has friends and brothers in arms who were there that day or who served with them, who now have that on their shoulders. There is Mr. Sergeant Andrews. I don't know how that guy can still, the only thing that I think that keeps him going is that he did everything right. I think he even said that in the podcast that I watched, but he knows that he did his job. He did it to the best extent they'd let him. And he had the shooters in his team that could have took that guy out. He knows that, and he's made sure the world knows that. And I don't know how but he had friends go down in that situation. I think it could have been more, honestly, if he had not been standing where he was standing, because he was kind of standing up a little bit and kind of took a large frontal blast, which definitely absorbed and created a cone behind him.
Correct.
Of protection for people. So he kind of gave himself up a little bit, which, but each one of these 13 guys and gals, they have friends who were there or friends back home that are affected by this. And there was 40 people wounded.
The survivor's guilt for some of these people. I think the sergeant, is sitting there, and I don't think that bothers him as much because he's out here telling the story. But you have some of them that they can't tell that story. They can't get that off their chest because of that guilt. I think he's been able to work through it a little bit, and being able to come out and tell people, getting on different podcasts and whatnot. But you have other people that they don't have that opportunity, and they're just wallowing in that in their own heads. And that every one of them that got hurt, that survived, knew most of the people sitting on this page right here in front of us. They knew them.
Well, this just goes to show you, and this is the whole reason why I wanted to bring this up and make a stream out of this, is that there's a certain cost. The chain of command at the highest levels doesn't appear to get it. To them, they're moving political footballs around. They're making political policy games, and they're playing. They're playing with pawns. But there is a massive human cost. The human cost of people falling off of airplanes while they're trying to escape a country or getting run over by it. The human cost of people swarming a gate and dying of heat exhaustion. The human cost of having the Taliban mercilessly executing people in front of you. And then the human cost of something like this was all set aside in terms of an expedient political solution to meet an arbitrary dead.
Yeah, something that they should never have even posted, made public. They should have just, yeah.
Well, I think we've done enough damage for one night, don't you think, guys?
Yeah. I just wanted to say something real quick because obviously you guys are a bit older than me. This hits me weird because I'm only 32. And I got out in 2016. So it's like, it's just insane to me that these are the people that, and I'm just sitting here at 32 in a basement. Like it.
Those are always the ones out there on the line.
Yep.
Not 80% of the guys. I was in a guard unit, which we have a lot of older people. but still like 60 to 70% of them were under 30. Because we have a lot of turnover. A lot of people don't want to stay because the guards is kind of annoying depending on what kind of full-time job you have, right? But it's like, this is the kind of thing out there on every wall. Like, I know the line is campy from A Few Good Men, but there's got to be somebody standing on that wall, right? And it's a figurative wall, and it's these people. It's guys like this. It's young guys and girls like this who volunteer. They can be off doing way better, much more fun things. Trust me, way more fun.
Yep.
I mean, Mr. Zed could probably tell you there's probably like 0 to 1 things fun about being a young Marine.
Depends on where you are.
Yeah. But I get it. And it's, they signed on the dotted line, they put themselves out there, and then they got hung out on that line. In my personal opinion, I'm going to say.
No, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
I'm not going to say, I mean, I enjoyed you guys being here for this. I think this went rather well. What we should probably do next time is maybe do something lighthearted. We could do like military fails or something along those lines. Would that be fun?
Yeah, that'd be great.
With me.
Or we each have to bring one really stupid military story.
Something that we were involved in or something that we know of?
Either or.
Okay. I got one of each.
Okay.
Yeah, I have many.
So we'll do that next time. We'll go because I think Mrs. KTZ might need therapy or something after this. I don't know. She stopped chatting. Is she still alive? Is she okay?
Yeah, she said that KFARR just called us old.
Okay, so I'm the baby. Every stream I'm in.
We're like 3 tiers though. It's like he's in his 30s. I'm in my 40s. What? You don't have to answer if you don't want to.
Mid 40s.
Mid 40s. Okay, so it's like 1 and 2 slightly similar tiers because I'm 45.
A little older.
Okay, so yeah. But in generations of military wise, we're like in 3 generations because I was in until 2020.
Yeah, I was 95 to 08.
And I was 98 to 2020, 2021-ish. And then KFARR was the baby of the group.
2012 to 2016.
Yeah. USS Cole was ultimately blamed for what it wasn't just a sleeping lookout. Oh, somebody wants to know what the ultimate cause of the USS Cole was. It just they didn't have any kind of like real security set up at that point?
Yes, actually. So
wasn't it like the garbage boat or some?
They disguised it as a garbage boat.
Yeah.
Okay, so I was in Seychelles when we got the call. We responded within 24 hours from Seychelles, which is in the Indian Ocean, up to where the call was at, off of Yemen. And when we got there, we provided the security for it, which was just off the bat, guns going and just secure everything. Just keep everyone away from everything. And we started flying in generals, colonels, admirals, because they wanted to know what happened, why did this happen, this is supposed to be a secure area, so on and so forth. And yes, it was not secure. They had utilized, like you said, a trash boat, disguised it as a trash boat to get up close to the USS Cole and then set it off. And just, if I say 25 pounds of explosive more is all it would have taken to drop that boat to the bottom.
Yeah, it almost split the keel, didn't it? It almost split the keel.
So it blew the hole on this side and it popped it like this. And 25 more pounds would have actually punctured all the way through and it would have sank because there's no way they could have stopped the water from coming in from both sides at the same time.
98KG, to answer your question, yes. Thanks to USS Cole, well, not thanks, but due to USS Cole, there are tremendous amounts more security measures in place on boats, on our naval vessels. They're including ribs with armed men, additional security watches, What else you got, KFARR? You got like extra 50 cal mounts.
Yeah, like, well, for me, we actually had people just patrolling the flight deck whose only job was to, hey, I'm up really high. I'm going to look around and see everything that's coming. And like a couple people, I mean, like 10 to 15, just walking in a giant aircraft carrier, all day when we were in port.
Oh, somebody got thrown under the bus. Mrs. KTZ is implying that the Marine security attachment being on R&R and the Seychelles was the cause of the problem. I will have to agree with that.
There's
and also,
a lot of beer and a lot of pizzas on the beach.
Yeah, can't be a problem. So 98 HTG, I've seen the security up to the point where some of our not littoral combat ships, our LCSs are like any kind of our amphibious vessels that carry marine amphibious vehicles like the LAVs.
Yep.
We'll mount them up, we'll drive them up on the decks, chain them down, and then use them as like little gun turrets so they can smoke things with their 25 millimeter cannons, which I think is a freaking awesome and very Marine idea. You know who thought of that? The E4 Mafia.
Mm-hmm.
The E4 Mafia came up with that plan. They were like,
yes, sir.
You're like, shit, you want to improve security around here? Why don't you strap a bunch of our LEVs up there, man?
And they probably said it as a joke because they're like, there's no way they're going to do this. It'd be cool, though.
And some captain, or some like lieutenant in the Marine Corps was like,
that would save us money.
Work. You mean like, and then they went to the Navy's like, you mean you can give us free 25 millimeter cannons?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
All right. They've done it. They even strapped the Marines have also put their new surface missiles on they just drive them up on the deck and chain them down and shoot missiles at things. They do it with surface to air missiles now. They're like, hey, what else can we strap up here and shoot at stuff with?
You guys know about the Wisconsin and the Texas, right? USS
Yes.
Wisconsin.
Yes. The USS Wisconsin.
Those are some stories are phenomenal.
Yes, the fat electrician has covered them with death, but we could go over them at some point. Yeah. The TLDR is one boat said, I need to shoot further, so I'm going to partially sink my own ship so it tilts more. That way I can shoot further. And then the Wisconsin got hit by some land-based artillery, and it hit like one of its gun turrets, like one of its 5-inch mounts. It hurt some people. So the Wisconsin decided to delete the entire hill the artillery came from. Temper.
Seems fair.
Overkill's underrated.
No one actually got seriously injured. They got hurt, but they didn't get seriously injured on the boat either.
Yeah, and then the Wisconsin captain was like, I got 9 16-inch guns. They ain't getting out of this. 16-inch 45 caliber, you're dead. Well, the next time we'll try to do this again, and like I said, we'll do some more stuff like that. Maybe we'll find a good, fun military story and try to do our best FTE impressions. You ever watch? Do you follow him?
Mm-mm.
You don't follow the fat electrician? Oh, I don't think. I mean, I don't know when your bedtime is, but if you start Googling him now, you may go down a rabbit hole.
Yeah, it's a solid rabbit hole.
It's solid. It's pretty dope. But
I have to say goodnight to my fishes and get out of here.
Gangsta lean. We're gonna say goodnight to everybody. We're gonna get out of here. Everybody, you guys have a good night. I hope you guys learned something from this. I hope you enjoyed it. And honor those 13 guys and what happened last weekend, like 2 years ago, to this year. So,
thank you for having me, gentlemen.
Yeah, thank you for coming. It was great.
No problem.
And we will see you in the next one. Wait, I just stole somebody's tagline.
Yeah, it happens. It's YouTube. All right, everybody. Bye.
Bye.